Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. It's your host, Matt Zahab. We are buzzing as always. And my guest is coming in hot 12 hours ahead of me on this lovely day. 9 a.m. for me, 9 p.m. for him. Still puts my mind in a blender, puts my mind in a pretzel every single time I get to record with someone who's literally a whole day ahead of me. Crazy how the world works. And I'm super pumped to have Will Fan on the show today, CEO and head of school at NewCampus, a challenger business school designed for emerging markets. As a partner at NewCampus, a pioneering Web3 foundation, Will is deeply involved in financing groundbreaking education and future of work initiatives. His work is driven by a blend of education, community building, and exploring new industries. Over the past decade, his experiences have spanned from China, Middle East, to Southern Asia, a little bit in between and everywhere else too, and he's done it all. Super pumped to get into this. A true builder who's actually moving the needle for the young folks and anyone who wants to get into Web3 and education. Will, pumped to have you on the show, my friend. How you doing on your lovely evening tonight?
Thanks for inviting me, Matt. I think we're going to have a lot of fun dialing in from the future, a few hours ahead from you. But I think the conversations will be, joy.
Likewise, pumped to have you on, buddy. Before we get into NewCampus and before we get into yourself, sort of as we're recording on Tuesday, July 9th, this will air in 2 days on Thursday, the 11th. So it will be hot and fresh for everyone. Talk of the town last couple of days is we're all poor again. I hate being in this poor boat, but again, it's part of the process, especially for someone like you who's building a very legitimate company and is not, speculative in any capacity. For a lot of us, the whole speculation part of crypto is really what makes that wheel go around. It's what moves the needle. And it's tough, especially when you have countries like Germany, and I could be wrong here, but I do believe Germany has the best economy in Europe. And I figured that the company with the best economy in Europe would maybe do a bit of a better job selling off all their Bitcoin instead of just dumping, $560 million worth in one day. A little suspect if you ask me. Whoever's head of trading over at Team Germany definitely could have done a better job, but I don't make the rules there. Well, what's your take on this current market sell-off? I know this isn't a price prediction podcast. We don't want to get into the nitty-gritties of that. But again, it is the biggest piece of news at the moment. What's going on with Mt. Gox? What's going on with Germany? Are we going to still see more pain? What's your take on this?
So I'm not a Web3 native, right? I've only really been in this space for a couple of years now, but a bit about my background, Matt. So I've been in the education space for a hot minute, almost a decade now.
Yep.
And so if you look at education as a sector, it's one of the slowest, toughest industries to move at all. If anything, it's so important for folks in the education business space to take a long-term view. And, when I first entered crypto, which was, 2020, 2021, for my own shits and giggles, my own personal investments, my own meme coinage, NFT communities, I think, a big part of my thesis was really looking at founders that can thrive in the rough.
Yeah.
And so I look at all these peaks and troughs as part of the hero's journey, right? This is not the first time that a project or an industry is going to take a hit. And if anything, it's actually a really good opportunity to scout and see how your portfolio, your investments, the ecosystem evolves. So I always see this as another good chance for resetting the wave a bit. And like what's happening with Germany, I think it's just a calibration of the world trying to figure out where does crypto sit as a legitimate asset or infrastructure on how we're building tech moving forward.
Yeah, well said there. One of the crazy things that I've sort of taken a much sort of, I guess, just more precise note on is when crypto is buzzing, obviously the vibes are better. That goes without being said because everyone is, making money together. But I find that when crypto isn't buzzing, there is literally zero, for lack of a better word, zero fucks given by the Web2 world. Like unless crypto prices are melting face, like you really don't see a whole lot on the news unless it's bad, unless there's another scam or unless there's another rug pull or Messi getting hacked or not getting hacked and pumping out water token, like the arguably one of the most famous, top 10 most famous people in the whole planet, arguably top 5, is pumping shit like that. How do you feel about that? Like, do you think that we need to break away from that? Do you think we're sort of priced in regards to, unless price is going up, no one's ever going to care? Like, what's your sentiment as someone who's building something that really has no correlation to, to sort of crypto prices as a whole? How does that make you feel? Like, do you and the team give a shit about that, or is it just heads down, keep building all the time?
So with NewCampus, we've been around for over a year now, and we launched the EDU token in the last bear cycle.
Yeah.
So I do think, it was a tough racket for us to make noise and build up that reputation.
100%.
Fast forward 12, 18 months, we've obviously had a different turn of leaf and hopefully proved our stripes a bit. But when we kind of think about the crypto sector as, as it stands right now, it's still so young, so nascent, so volatile, right? And so when we're playing in the education space where we have to blend Web 2, Web 1, governments, corporates, universities, that's definitely a marriage that we need to figure out. How do we ensure that the volatility and the nascency of the space is well crafted? One thing that I'm definitely seeing a lot more about is the maturity of founders evolving. So when I entered the NFT space 2.5 years ago, you would have 16, 18-year-old kids just launching and, rugging 3 weeks later just because of resilience or the mindset wasn't there. And now you're starting to see bigger players that are putting their life's work behind the business. And, case in point, our backers at Animoca Brands, they've been around for decades. So how do you look at finding more folks like that want to put their name in the sand and really think about taking a long-term view on the space? I still think there's a long way to go. But a lot of these, again, highs and lows is character testing, and that's also part of the game as well.
Yeah, well said there. Let's jump right into NewCampus here. How are you guys integrating blockchain, crypto education into the curriculum? I'll throw that question at you, and also just give us sort of the, the high level elevator pitch, just so everyone knows exactly what you and the team are building and how it differs from a traditional education system.
Great question. So we've evolved quite some time, right? Early days, it was really a Genesis partnership launch with the likes of TinyTap and Web2, K12 platform, Animoca Brands, Binance Launchpad. So really thinking about, can you, take a story of rethinking, reinventing education and put it on chain? I think fast forward 12, 18 months later, now, we've really fast-tracked the type of partners and people getting involved. And so, Matt, there's a few areas that we're trying to tackle, apart from sort of top level, the 5 trillion education industry that we want to disrupt. But I think there's a few areas that we're trying to solve right now. One is, how do you support the DAO and Web3 ecosystem become more mature through education? So that's one area that we're trying to play. The second area that we're trying to play is education financing. So with a drought of edtech, future of work financing in the Web2 world, there leaves a huge gap to support young founders, young teams that are building for emerging markets like Africa, LATAM, the Middle East. And then the final thing is, with the next generation of teachers, content creators, educators like yourself, we believe that that's essentially the future of learning. And so how do you blend these nodes of education problems, use existing technology or the high frequency, high volatility of Web3 and marry those two together? So we're really starting with baby steps. We already have a few products that are underway. I'm happy to share more on that. But the goal of this foundation is really pick apart challenges in the education system and how do you use this nation building exercise of community members, builders to co-create together.
I love that one line. You said blending nodes of education problems into solutions. I've never thought about it like that. I mean, I feel like the whole, do you need to, and again, I'm going a little off the rails here, but when I just sort of think of the future education myself and I look at what I learned in junior school, middle school, and high school, and I look at some of the podcasts I've listened to, or some of my, not idols for a lack of better terms, but people I follow on Twitter who I would, do bad things for, even though I've never met them, just because of how much knowledge they've given me and how much they've taught me in life. A lot of these people are younger than me. I'm 29 years old. They're younger than me, and they were homeschooled. and they appear to have brilliantly high EQ as well as IQ. And that's sort of the thing that me personally, at least, that I would have thought, and a lot of people probably think, that you miss out on when you get homeschooled, and that is the whole EQ. Like, how do you, if you're not in sports teams, how do you gain those interpersonal skills and relationship building and leadership and management, so on and so forth. But with that being said, the whole future of ed and ed tech, like, are you still pro uni? Are you still pro like the traditional system where everyone should be going into classes, even though a lot of the time in classes now it's literally just like the teacher is just mailing it in and it's really something on a screen that's teaching the kids? Is there even a need for that? Then it allows everyone to be globalized. And then you have the whole point of like, how the hell is no one actually executed on a place like Africa or the poorer parts of Asia, where there's hundreds of millions, if not billions of kids who don't have access to education, but there's really no excuse not to. I know I'm throwing a lot at you here, but like, what do you feel on sort of the whole future of education as a whole? Like, what does that look like in your eyes? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road?
So maybe I can start by talking about my personal journey, Matt, because I think education is so unique to everyone's journey. So I'm born and raised in Australia, but my parents were refugees. So they moved over from Vietnam, Hong Kong. And so putting schooling fees on a credit card. My dad was a cab driver for 30 years. Seeing how hard my family pushed to send us to a good education, to a good school, and pursue new career paths. So that really started with my why on why education was meaningful and transformational. And so fast forward 10 years later in building NewCampus, that's actually one of the key problems that we solve. How do we enable the next generation of young managers, young leaders at emerging companies in Southeast Asia thrive? And so we actually serve a big portion of the tech companies in this part of the world, Indonesia, India, Thailand, and it's really looking at markets that are young, nascent, where formal education is hard to access. And so when the open campus opportunity came along, which was the brainchild of Yatsui, right? He is very passionate about how do you elevate others and provide access, right? He's done it in the gaming space. He's now doing it in the education space. So when we think about education impact in Web3, there's so many different ways that we can tackle this, right? But it's all about how do we identify the low-hanging fruits. One area that we're actually looking at and spending a lot of investment and time into is frontier markets like Africa, like LATAM, like the Middle East, where you have this next cohort of billion users that might not have access to your Harvards, your Stanfords, your SMUs, right? And so as career paths, as AI, as Web3 evolves, what does the future 5, 10, 15-year roadmap look like for them? And so we'd love to play a small part in that, whether it's financing their scholarships or empowering them through career paths and career styles. And even the 60 companies, 60 projects that we finance now, they actually span 20 million learners globally. So how do you really support these frontier innovators, creators that just need that extra step forward? And for us, it's, again, playing that financing part, playing that connection, collaboration part. But at the end of the day, it's really bringing that ecosystem together. It's very fragmented. How
do you guys, again, with such a complex industry like education, how do you guys pick and choose where to attack? Because like you said, again, going back to your line, the node of problems, you guys are blending the node of issues into solutions. How do you pick and choose which angle to attack? It's not like, a traditional business. You have your, obviously, your execution with your sales, you have your marketing, you have your PR, you have your internal product development, blah, 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 investors if you're public. But like, you guys have so many different angles, countries. It's like just a never ending dartboard. Where do you throw those darts? How do you choose where to throw those darts?
One bite at a time. One bite at a time. And I think this is something that I'm coaching a lot and getting coached a lot around the space that we're playing in. Double-edged sword with education projects and education founders, right, is that they are always looking to solve and boil the ocean. And the challenge that is you either solve one problem or you're able to solve all of them. And I think for us, it really started with picking and choosing our battles, right? We're not going to be able to go into mature markets like Europe and US and quickly, transform their education system overnight. But how do you look at financing underserved edtech founders? So that's part of our accelerator that we launched. So we invest capital into emerging education companies in emerging markets that are solving big problems. That's one area that we launched last year with the Open Campus Accelerator. Now what we're launching is our own layer 3 with Arbitrum. So this is something that we're very excited about, because at the end of the day, it's how do you work with this next generation of developers, builders, creators to build on our technology and infrastructure. And so I do think for us, it is a series of chess moves. We're not trying to onboard 100 million learners tomorrow, but it's really taking a long-term view of, how do you support K to grey, but what are the areas, the markets, the problems that we can really have unfair advantage to take on?
Well said. The new L3, why? What's the purpose of that? Just so you can sort of have full control of everything? I mean, obviously there's still a bit because it's not an L1, but like, I feel like you have more control with an L3, almost more so than an L2, right? So it's like, why the need for a new L3?
Opportunity is everywhere when it comes to the education space. And I think we've been very fortunate to be in a position where DAOs, partnerships, Web2, universities, once they start hearing about the vast positioning that we want to play in, it opens up a lot of doors. So it's a combination of opportunity and timing of the market. But secondly, as we start to build our portfolio of companies, we're actually seeing so many different opportunities for us to build technology on top. So one of our products is verifiable credentials. So as we look at new ways of learning and new ways of thinking about what a quote unquote degree looks like, how do you actually support this next generation of learner? So when I said earlier, Matt, around really taking abstracts of Web3 and applying it into the education space, I do think there's a lot of opportunity for us to play there. I think, with this L3, it just gives us a lot more control. If you think about traditional education systems, your MOOCs, your Udemy's, your LinkedIn Learnings, it's still very housed within a corporate. And with a corporate, you have your corporate agenda.
No control at all. It's all them.
We think a lot about obviously empowering others to succeed. And I think this is just a stepping stone for us to move forward with our larger term goal.
I love the verifiable aspect you said. And I assume that would be some type of ZK tech that you and the team are using to verify whether, Will or Matt did indeed graduate, grade, 9, 10, 11, 12, and did receive courses and certificates, sort of XYZ, which is, very important. And I obviously have no experience in the emerging market. I was born and raised in Toronto, in Canada, but heck, I had buddies who were not the best academically, but were world-class specimen athletes and got full rides to schools in the States. And, the high schools they went to understood that Will or Matt needed an extra, 5 or 10% here in order to get that scholarship. And easy little ways to just boom. No, there's no real governing body. It's just sort of the teacher giving the mark, where if there's a way to actually double check, did Matt or Will actually do this with sort of the more legitimate and clean way? I mean, that's easy money right there. And heck, if this was happening in fully emerged markets like Canada and USA and Europe, like I wonder what's happening in places where there's not as much governance and it's a lot easier to sort of break up that paper trail. It's probably a massive issue you guys are facing too.
Yeah, I think it's also a very good way for us to crowdsource new ideas. So if you think about the Web2 education landscape, we would have been brought up with a lot of these tools, these technologies. Even, ChatGPT now is probably the largest education tool in the market.
Yeah.
And so when we kind of think about the evolution and leapfrog that's happening with technology right now, I do believe that Web3 has its place to stay. And, verifiable credentials is one part. Educational financing is another space that we're so obsessed about right now because, for us, coming from Australia and Canada, we're blessed to have great governmental support. But for the rest of the world where, you need to go to, put your degree on credit card, or you need to, in places like the Philippines, you need to go borrow money from gangsters to go to school. And so how do you actually provide infrastructure that supports markets like this? Because if you're able to uplift these economies, therefore you're uplifting those countries, therefore you're uplifting different parts of the world. And I think, again, it comes to that double-edged sword, Matt, around education is such a vast problem. How do you use your unfair advantage, take a long-term view, but also solve real problems that are in the market?
I love that. Well, you're on fire, but we got to take a quick break and give a huge shout out to our sponsor of the show. That is Prime XBT. longtime friends and longtime sponsors of the Crypto News podcast. We love the team at Prime XBT as they offer a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a veteran. You can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. Prime XBT is also running an exclusive promo for listeners of the Crypto News podcast. Use the promo code CryptoNews50. That is CryptoNews50. CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Again, that is CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Now back to the show with Will. Well, you're on fire here. I want to keep buzzing on Open Campus for a second. I love the name as well. Kudos to whoever came up with that name. But I want to go back to the elevator pitch. If I'm a parent, perhaps, in an emerging country, and I see Open Campus, I see NewCampus, I know you guys have a bunch of different names here, but if I'm a parent and I want my kid to get into this, like, and obviously they would never get, maybe they would get on the phone with you, but they're on the phone with a rep from the company, or they're reading your literature, your copy, whatever the case may be, seeing your ads. What sort of moves the needle? What gets them to be like, hey, you know what, this is a good opportunity for my kid? Like, are there any, particular selling points or really appeasing sort of, heads of that tentacle that really get the people going?
So the challenge with education is you need to deal with so many different stakeholders. And with those stakeholders, it comes with different pitches, different conversations,
different messaging,
right?
for everyone. Yeah, that's wild.
Whether it's, mum from Jakarta, a student from Toronto, a governmental body from Dubai. And so, this is actually why when we think about building partnerships and the nation building exercise, it's really looking at folks from serving problems across K to grey. And so in the case that you mentioned, Matt, around, a mother sending their kid, we actually have about 15, 16 portfolio companies that already serve, some of the biggest markets in Latin America and in the Middle East. One company is called EduCup. They put mathematics in a gamified app. So think Duolingo, but for maths. And so we're working with them to port over their 2.5 million learners on chain. And so from the end recipient side, the mother that's helping her kid subscribe to the app, they actually don't see or feel any sort of difference with their onboarding. It's the same app, learn, bite-sized skills every day through your AI tutor. And so there's a lot of different ways that we think about Trojan horsing Web3 into supporting these businesses and thereby supporting the end learners at the end of the day. So so that's, one area. Another area that I'm very passionate about is obviously workforce upskilling, right? As career paths are evolving and the frontier career a la, podcasting as a service or, marketeers on Web3 or AI transcribers, right? I do think the intensity of coming to folks like you and I are going to increase. So how do you build that trusted brand when people think about changing and reinventing themselves, they don't think of Harvard anymore. They think of OC or Open Campus.
Interesting. That's, again, just fortifying your point about how tough the sort of the ed tech space is. Like, those are some of the most, and I could be completely wrong here, but I feel like universities, maybe not so much schools, but universities are some of the most powerful brands on the planet. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people who've never been to the States, they're definitely aware of the Harvards, the Princetons, the Stanfords. Like, how do you take market share from them? Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, it's got to be tough.
It took Harvard 400 years to build that brand. And the challenge for us is, can we build OC in 4? And I think like a lot of that comes with black swan events like the pandemic where everyone just started, learning online. And now you have this new iteration, which is AI, completely transforming. And, we work and partner with over 400 universities. So we're seeing that they're trying to rethink how do you onboard the next cohort of students and, clients from their side. So I do think it's more of a collaborative approach. Like I think long are we trying to challenge the system, but I think it's essentially building our position as a big part of that infrastructure. Why I think Web3 is so important for us to start capturing ground and capturing market share is because no one's really playing in this space, especially in this downturn market, right? Everyone's quickly moving to sexier problems like GameFi or DeFi or, the next and.
Yeah.
But education is a long-term play. And so when we think about partners and think about building, it's really look at the next 10, 25, 50, 100 years and how do you actually build that timeless brand?
Well said. I do want to jump back into the whole Web3 part of education, but one quick thing that's on my mind. I was going to ask, is the future of education online? But of course it is. I guess the better question is this trend that we see, is it going to continue to grow? Like in 10 years, are kids not even going to be going to school anymore? Like, heck, who knows what's going to happen with AI in 10 years? Like, you can't tell me that we're not going to have teachers. There's no way that an AI teacher won't be better than an actual human. It's just, I can't see it happening. But like, what, are kids just not going to be going into classes anymore? Is it going to be like you're at home, in a room, your parents are working from home, maybe you are going to school, but it's not an actual human anymore. It's a robot, or it's just a screen. Like, what does the future of education look like?
If I had a crystal ball in 30 years, 25 years, I wouldn't be in this space.
Yes.
But I think what has definitely been a renaissance is new technology freeing up time to have more human interactions. And so with the Zoom, uplift during the pandemic, everyone thought that you could essentially run business schools and run classes completely virtual. But then today we're human people, right? Like why we go to conferences, why we, want to travel around the world to say hello to friends is because at the end of the day, that's what makes who we are. So I do think what technology does, it improves the experience, but it allows us to focus on more creative and humanized experiences at the end of the day. And so there's a lot of companies that we're backing right now that are supporting frontier market issues, which is getting a job, landing a career, developing technical skills. There still needs to be coders, developers, scientists in certain worlds. But in, modern worlds, mature markets, there's a lot more creative work like the stuff that we're doing now. So I do think when we look at the temperament of the education space, it can be divided horizontally and vertically around maturity, but also adoption over time. So, why we're so bullish on emerging markets, similar to how Myanmar adopted Facebook before the internet, right? I do think there's opportunities for us to leapfrog certain practices. And if you look at even the conscience of branding, right? I don't think that the Gen Z, Gen Alpha are going to be thinking as much around, hey, I need that blue chip degree before pursuing careers, because now we're already seeing them shift towards creators and builders,
being an entrepreneur,
and being entrepreneur, exactly. So I do think there's going to be, that already is a shift in how do we stay relevant and build that infrastructure and support for these learners and the next generation to move forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. But when it comes to sort of like the future of education and its relationship with tech, I was at a wedding literally 3 days ago on Saturday. Shout out my boy Anthony. Absolutely lovely wedding. Him and his now wife Paulina. Absolutely incredible wedding in Toronto. I met one of their friends. They have a 2-year-old kid. I forget the name of the kid. I definitely was a couple drinks deep when this conversation happened, but they told me a bunch of stories about how their little boy is like, this kid can literally navigate an iPad and an iPhone. He's 2 years old, like a full iPad, like can use all the apps, can type small words too. He's 2 years old. This kid knows how to type on a friggin' iPad. And then I look at the 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds I've met where their interpersonal skills, and again, I'm biased, obviously, you and I feel like are, similar gens. I'm 29 years old. When we were 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like we were running around on the streets until, playing road hockey, playing basketball, playing manhunt until our parents ripped us back into the houses. That's how it was back in the day. When you're a little bit, once you hit 10, 11, 12, then you're on MSN, maybe chatting with your friends, finally chatting with girls, then Call of Duty comes around, then, you have Fortnite. But like, we didn't grow up with this, where these kids are so ingrained with tech. Like, I don't even know if they need that interpersonal teacher to sort of teach them anymore, because they're so clean. It's so intuitive with the tech nowadays. And that's what makes me think, where it's like, okay, there's a lack of teachers in places like Africa and places like LATAM, Middle East, Asia, with a computer or an iPad or a phone. This is fixed. There's no reasons why these kids cannot get a similar education that I got, minus that in-person teacher. And that's something that you guys are doing, which I love. It's just it's sort of wild to think about.
I think, the fascinating part in now funding other projects, other startups around the world is just seeing the maturity of how certain industries have moved. So you talked about emerging markets. One of the companies that we backed. They're called Skiza. They elevate teachers in Nigeria. Their challenge is, students don't even have a way to check in to their day-to-day school, right? So they're
Wow.
literally traveling, hiking and walking for 2-3 hours to get to their
Yeah.
school. And there's actually no way for, their teachers to record attendance.
There's zero attendance?
Yeah, exactly. And so, they work very closely with, United Nations and other, education bodies to
Jeez
support
Louise.
elevation and student attendance. So that's a very different challenge to
Hold up, Will.
supporting
So
kids.
there's, sorry to interrupt, there's not even just like a check sheet, a little piece of lined paper. Will made it today, checkbox. Not even that.
They do have manual papers, but the challenge with that type of education system is parents and therefore the kids would move homes quite often. So over time, you essentially lose records. And so if you're thinking about uplifting an entire country, an entire continent, how do you ensure that the schooling system is actually intact? Now, that's actually why I thought that Web3 problem could be quite interesting, because it's essentially just verifying attendance. Very simple tech, but working with them on distribution. But back to your point, Matt, around this next gen of 6-year-old, 8-year-olds that are watching Skibbity Toilet, and I mean, the awesome thing is they're still watching Pokemon, but I'm definitely learning a lot about how they're absorbing content and the type of content creators behind them. And so there's also an importance to elevate the caliber of those teachers bringing that content live, right? Whether it's through YouTube or supporting the infrastructure at school. And I do think at the end of the day, when we think about solving education problems, that's also a trail that we need to figure out. Is it supporting the student with their tech? Is it supporting the parents with their financing? Is it supporting the teacher with the vast capability of what they can deliver? So really picking and choosing the battles that you can see great impact over time, and hopefully for the holders of EDU and for the ecosystem of partners supporting them as well.
I love that. So just to sort of summarize here, Will. So you guys at OC literally it's not just a Web3 tech company, which again, anytime you're in crypto, everyone sort of just gives you that like Web3 label, boom, this is you, this is all you do. That is not you guys. You guys give tools, resources, funding, anything, you name it. You guys provide solutions to problems in the existing sort of education/ed tech world. And part of that is providing Web3 solutions. Do I have that right?
Yeah. I think another layer is working with Web3 financing. I think that's truly the arbitrage right now, because we're working with high growth, unique capital that allows us to fund scholarships, financing initiatives all around the world. So I think that has taken time for us to figure out, and we're still working it out now. But, case in point, we just launched a 150 million EDU rewards pool for node operators. We've just launched, or hopefully about to close, a 20 million fund to back builders on EDU chain. So really thinking a lot about creative financing that supports real world problems.
Super cool. Last sort of thing before you go. Again, you guys are shipping and moving at an insane clip, as you just discussed, that $150 million EDU sort of pool as well, the $20 million new financing round that's going to come out as well to provide more solutions for problems. Again, I love how I always try to find recurring themes from the guest and their company, and you are a massive identify problem, find solution, execute guy. And we love to see that. But going back to you guys are moving and grooving at a crazy clip. What is popping off over the next couple of days, weeks, months? What kind of news, upcoming news, partnerships, ways people can get involved to collab? What do you got for us on that front?
I think a big part of our focus now is the layer 3. And the goal is to really look at how do we elevate builders on the EDU chain. It's setting up success for folks that want to work in impact initiatives, but also empowering our companies that have been financed and therefore the learners that are part of that ecosystem. So I do think, if you're a builder, I'd love for you to come and, check out our tech and get involved with our hackathons and initiatives that we're setting up. But if you're also a Web3 project, be it an NFT or a DAO yourself, we do have a lot of different tools, infrastructure, onboarding support that we can provide. And again, that's part of our purpose in not only bringing more faces to Web3, but also elevating the Web3 ecosystem through education. So a lot of different fun things that we're doing. But if you're interested in that future of work education space, always open to collaborate and have a conversation.
Love it. Well, appreciate your time, my friend. What an episode. We'll have to have you on for round 2, especially at the rate that you guys are moving. Before you go, can you please let our listeners know where they can find you personally and, of course, NewCampus online and on socials?
You can find me on Twitter, hello Wilfan, and also our Open Campus Twitter, opencampus_XYZ. So we're quite active there for our Web3 audience. On Web2, you'll find us on LinkedIn with the same tags. But always open for a conversation, always open for a Zoom chat.
Love it. And just so we have all ducks in a row, what is the difference between NewCampus and Open Campus? Because I got a bunch of different Open Campus and NewCampus in my show notes here. I just want to make sure that everything is kosher before we head off.
Yeah. So Open Campus is the ecosystem where you have a lot of partners like TinyTap, like Animoca Brands, like NewCampus. So I'm one of the key partners for Open Campus, but the company that I run is NewCampus.
Gotcha. Amazing. Well, appreciate you, my man. Can't wait for round 2. Wishing you and the team all the best. And heck, you're wrapping up for bed soon. Yeah, I'm just getting started and you're just wrapping up. But appreciate you. Can't wait for the next one. Appreciate your time, my friend.
Likewise. Take care of yourself, buddy.
Folks, what an episode with Wilfan, CEO and head of school at NewCampus, and of course, a partner at the one and only Open Campus, a pioneering Web3 foundation. We touched a little bit of everything today. Overview of Open Campus and NewCampus, bridging the gap between Web3 and education, launching new L3s, and of course, verifying education problems on chain. Huge shout out to Will and the team for making this happen. If you guys enjoyed this one, and I hope you did, please do subscribe. It would mean the world to my team and I. Speaking of the team, love you guys. Thank you so much for everything. Eustace, you are the man. And back to the listeners, keep on growing those bags, touch some grass, and of course, keep on staying healthy, wealthy, and happy. Love you guys. Talk soon. Bye for now.